first time I saw him, he wasn't a name. He was a silhouette under stage lights, wobbling with a rubber nose, moving as if the floor itself were shifting beneath his feet. A room full of strangers fell into rhythm with him, laughing at the mystery before they even knew what they were looking at. Sometimes a character appears long before the man behind it is understood. There were other alter egos in hip-hop, of course. Masks, voices, personas built to break rules. But this one felt different. It carried both a wink and a wound, the kind of creation born from someone who knew joy and sadness in equal measure. Long before the world learned his name, he was just a kid crossing states and seasons, searching for a sound that felt like home. And somewhere between those miles, a question grew quietly around him. How does a man invent a character that becomes bigger than himself? The answer, like most truths in music, begins far from the spotlight, with a boy listening to old records, with hands learning rhythm, with a heart trying to belong. And that is where his story really starts. He was born Gregory Jacobs, but even that name carried a tenderness most people never knew. His mother chose it because she adored the grace of tap dancer Gregory Hines. In a small Brooklyn apartment, before the noise of fame or the weight of expectation, he was simply a quiet boy learning how sound could shape a room. His family moved often, following work, following hope. Upstate New York gave him space he had never had before. Trees rising past window frames, winter winds rattling the siding, the kind of silence a child can pour music into. By 5, he was already performing for relatives, humming Motown melodies with the seriousness of someone twice his size. When he sang Stevie Wonder, he tried to match not just the notes but the warmth. Then came Tampa. He was 8, old enough to remember the road behind him but young enough to believe every new town held its own promise. Tampa in those years was still wide and rural in places, with rivers that smelled of moss and early morning fog. He swam in lakes without fear, caught snakes with his bare hands, and wandered barefoot through heat-thick afternoons. It was a childhood stitched together by nature and noise. But at 11, something shifted. The drums called to him. Rhythm became both refuge and compass. With a few friends, he formed a neighborhood band called the Nwood Specials, using the name of the street as if it were a badge. He sat behind a small drum kit, keeping time while the others leaned into songs by Sly and the Family Stone, Herbie Hancock, and the Headhunters. They weren't trying to be famous. They were trying to feel alive. When that band dissolved, he created another, Parliament 2, a tribute to the music orbiting his imagination. They won the school talent show, clutching a small trophy that felt larger than it looked. Winning wasn't the point. The applause was. It was the first time he felt the world echo something back to him. But life is rarely linear. His parents divorced, and he returned to New York with a quieter heart. Back in the city, hip-hop was blooming on sidewalks and subway walls, breakers spinning on cardboard, graffiti blooming across train cars, kids trading verses on corners under flickering streetlights. He wanted in. He traded his drum set for 2 turntables and a mixer, renamed himself MC Starchild, and began learning a new language, scratches, blends, breath control, swagger. Then another move, back to Tampa after his father gained custody. Again a new start, again unfamiliar ground. But he found others who carried the same hunger. Kids from the East Coast trying to build hip-hop in a place that didn't yet know its name. They formed a DJ crew called the Master Blasters and threw parties in parks until the nights felt electric. Crowds grew, and before long, he became one of the youngest on-air DJs in Florida. It wasn't fame, but it was foundation. And somewhere in those restless years, between the rivers, the city blocks, and the turntables, Gregory Jacobs began becoming Shock G. Oakland was where the pieces finally began to click. In the back rooms of record stores and small apartments that smelled of dust and vinyl sleeves, he met the people who would help shape everything that came next. There was Chopmaster Jay, full of ideas and industry whispers, and Kenny K, steady behind the turntables. Together they were just searching for a sound they hadn't heard yet, a mix of humor, rebellion, and the funk that lived in Gregory's bones. They recorded early demos with borrowed equipment and quiet confidence. Labels started to take notice. Tommy Boy Records eventually brought them in, wanting to see if the strange, kinetic energy could work on stage. It did. The room lit up the moment they stepped out. There was nothing polished about them, nothing predictable. That unpredictability was the spark. When Do What You Like hit the streets in 1989, it felt like someone had opened a window in hip-hop. The air changed. The song wasn't designed for charts. It was designed for joy. Crowds overseas embraced it first, chanting every playful line. But even that early buzz couldn't have prepared them for what happened next. Because the world had not yet met Humpty Hump. The character began as a joke, a voice he played with, a bit of mischief borrowed from cartoons and P-Funk theatrics. But when he found the cheap plastic nose in a party store bin, something clicked. He put it on, tilted his head, and a new creature appeared. Humpty was exaggerated, wild, impossible to ignore. And somehow, beneath the layers of satire, he told the truth about letting go. Then came the beat, a bass line that rolled like loose marbles. Drums that felt like a floor shaking under your feet. And over it all, Humpty's voice weaving comedy and confidence into something unexpectedly magnetic. The Humpty dance didn't just chart. It cracked open the decade. It hit #1 on the rap charts, shot to #11 on the pop charts, and spread across clubs, school gyms, basement parties. Anywhere someone needed to feel free for a few minutes. Kids memorized the lines. DJs looped the break. Dancers threw their hands up as if the room itself were swaying in an earthquake. But beneath the laughter was something else. Craft. Shock G's craft. He blended jazz chords with blues textures, layered Parliament-style funk with rock edges, stitched humor into protest, and treated the studio like a laboratory. Albums weren't just songs. They were worlds. Sex Packets proved that. It went platinum, but more importantly, it showed that hip-hop could be playful without being shallow, political without being heavy-handed. And somewhere amid the tours and the new fame, young rappers backstage watched Shock G closely. They studied his timing, his generosity, his willingness to let others shine. One of those young men was a 19-year-old with sharp eyes and a restless voice. The world would come to know him as Tupac Shakur. And without Shock G, the world might never have known him at all. Success has a way of casting long shadows. And in those shadows, pressure grows quietly. By the mid-1990s, the world around Shock G was shifting. Hip-hop was hardening, sharpening its edges, leaning toward darker bass lines and street-cut narratives. Labels were chasing formulas, chasing anything that sounded like the new charts, and they pushed digital underground toward something that felt less like them. They wanted more jokes, more Humpty, more sex-driven singles. But Shock's heart had never belonged to formulas. He wanted room for politics, room for humanity, room for the kind of truth that couldn't always fit inside a punchline. When the Body Hat Syndrome didn't sell the way the industry demanded, Tommy Boy Records let them go. After years of platinum tours, sold-out crowds, and a global dance phenomenon, the group found itself standing outside the machine it had helped fuel. Public praise feels warm, but industry silence can feel colder than anything. Still, Shock carried himself with the same humor, the same grace, even as he wondered what came next. Then came the deeper wound, Tupac's death. It wasn't just the loss of a star. It was the loss of a younger brother, a student, a friend he had once pulled onto a tour bus so the world could finally hear him. Shock spoke often about the moment Tupac regained consciousness in the hospital, the moment he realized his injuries might take away the life he knew. Those memories lived inside Shock like a bruise that never fully healed. The East Coast-West Coast war never sat right with him. He rejected it in interviews, in private conversations, in music. But rejecting a storm doesn't stop the rain. Personal storms followed. Years of small compromises, label battles, grief, and exhaustion began folding in on him. The studio, once his sanctuary, became a place that tightened his chest. He slipped into drugs gradually, the way many artists do. First for escape, then for quiet, then because the world outside felt too sharp without it. Ecstasy, cocaine, acid, mushrooms, each one another door he shouldn't have walked through. And yet, he walked anyway. There were moments of clarity, attempts at sobriety, fresh mornings where he chose vegetables and sunlight instead of darkness. Friends told him they saw the old glow return, the gentle wit, the soft laugh. He tried. He always tried. But addiction is patient. It waits in the corners. By 2021, the struggle had grown heavier. A hotel hallway in Tampa. A disturbance call. Words slurred. Clothes discarded. A man stumbling through his own unraveling. The reports were clinical, but behind each sentence was a life bending under years of invisible weight. 3 weeks later, another incident. Meth, a bathroom stall. A flash of anger that didn't sound like the man he used to be. And then, on April 22, 2021, the silence. A hotel manager knocking on a door that should have opened. A room holding a stillness that should not have been there. A life ended by a mixture that has taken far too many. Fentanyl, methamphetamine, and alcohol. The world lost a legend that day. But the tragedy had been unfolding long before anyone realized how fragile he'd become. In America, Shock G's story was never just the rise of an artist. It was the rise of a cultural mirror. Hip-hop was becoming a new national language, carrying both the humor and the heaviness of black life in a country still wrestling with its own contradictions. When Digital Underground appeared with their playfulness, their funk ancestry, their strange and brilliant masks, it felt like a reminder that joy itself could be a form of resistance. Older listeners heard echoes of Parliament. Younger listeners heard permission to be weird, to be free, to be loud in their own way. Across the United States, the Humpty dance didn't just top charts. It softened boundaries. College campuses embraced it. MTV rotated it endlessly. Cities from Oakland to Chicago moved in unison to a wobble that felt both silly and sincere. America loved the humor, but it often overlooked the architect behind it. The musician layering jazz chords into party anthems. The producer guiding a young Tupac toward a voice the world wasn't ready for. Fame rarely distributes credit fairly. Shock G knew that, but he carried it quietly. Internationally, the reaction was different. Overseas crowds didn't yet understand the political undercurrents in the music, nor the tension between West Coast and East Coast scenes. They understood rhythm. They understood spectacle. They understood that a man in a Groucho nose, rapping with a grin, could make a room forget its troubles. In Europe, Do What You Like caught fire before it did in the States. In Asia and Australia, Humpty dance became a cultural import, a kind of joyful American export wrapped in funk basslines and cartoon colors. But when Shock G died, the grief looked different too. In America, fans spoke about mentorship, about Tupac, about what it means to lift someone else into greatness. The loss felt intimate, like losing a chapter in a book many had grown up reading. In other parts of the world, the sadness was quieter, more about the nostalgia of a song than the complexity of the man behind it. That contrast revealed something the charts never did. Shock G belonged deeply to the American story of hip-hop, a story shaped by black artistry, black struggle, and black imagination. And even as the world mourned him, it was America that felt the emptiest, as if a light in one of its cultural windows had quietly gone out. In the end, what remains of a man like Shock G is rarely held in a single memory. It lingers instead in fragments. A wobbling dance step, a bass line that bends like warm light, a plastic nose lying on a dressing room table. His life was never only about the character he created. It was about the quiet intelligence behind it, the restless artist who stitched humor and heartbreak into the same beat, and the mentor who opened a path for one of hip-hop's most powerful voices. His legacy lives in the way people move when Humpty dance plays, in the laughter that rises without permission, and in the recognition that hip-hop could be both playful and profound. It lives in sex packets, in the tapes he made in dim studios, in the artists who carried forward pieces of his sound. And most of all, it lives in the story of a young man named Tupac Shakur, whose first steps into the world were guided by Shock G's steady hand. When Oakland declared August 25th Digital Underground Day, it felt less like a ceremony and more like a homecoming. A city acknowledging the man who brought its spirit to global stages. A community claiming the artist who shaped so much of its rhythm. And somewhere in that gesture is a truth too often forgotten. Brilliance isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the person standing slightly behind the spotlight, holding it steady for someone else. His life ended too early, with shadows that grew heavier than any one person should carry. But even in that sadness, his music remains untouched, bright, mischievous, generous. A reminder that creativity can outlive the body that made it. If you close your eyes, you can still hear it. A laugh behind the microphone. A piano finding its way through a late-night room. A voice saying, "Stop what you're doing, 'cause I'm about to ruin." And somewhere beneath it all, the heartbeat of Gregory Jacobs, steady as ever. If this story brings someone to mind, someone who once made you dance or made you feel seen, share their name below. Stories last longer when we carry them together. And if you'd like to walk with us through more lives like this one, you're welcome.